Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Another bonus episode of the Last Round Podcast coming to you from the Chocolatito against Julio Cesar Martinez weigh-in. And who better to have than the biggest Chocolatito fan? Ring Magazine's Dougie Fischer. Thanks for joining me, Dougie.
Hey, I'm glad to join you. Thanks for asking me.
So an early shock this morning for me and you. I imagine I'm travelling down here and all I hear is Martinez is 2 pounds overweight and the fight might not go ahead. What was your first impression?
Not the kind of news you want to wake up to. And I had like a ring-related Zoom meeting that I had to attend to at 10 o'clock. And so I hadn't even heard about it, but the guy I was talking to, and he's just like some industry guy, right? We're just talking about whatever, company synergies between his company and Ring Magazine. And he said, I just heard Martinez weighed in 2 pounds heavy. And I'm like, what? Wait, I panicked because I'm here for the weigh-in. I drove in from Inglewood yesterday so I could make the final press conference and I could make the weigh-in. I could actually be there to cover it. And I'm like, did something change? Because the weigh-in was scheduled for, I said media arrival like 12, and then the weigh-in would take place at 1 o'clock. And then I forgot, no, that's the TV weigh-in. That's the media weigh-in. That's the public weigh-in. That's the press event. Mm-hmm. That's the publicity event weigh-in. The real weigh-in happens in the morning, and the only people who are there are the fighters and their teams and the commission, the members, the California State Commissioners. And so I was like, oh, crap. So all right, well, he missed it. I was like, that's the first attempt. So whatever, we finished our Zoom meeting, and I'm like, I start texting people. So I text members of Team Chocolatito and members of Team Martinez. Now, who do you want to guess gets back to me?
Right.
Team Chocolatito.
Yeah. Who out in trouble.
So I'm like, hey, is that true? I said, yeah, it's true. I said, what's up? And he's like, well, he's trying to lose the weight now. He has 2 hours. I'm like, right, 2 hours, So whatever, an hour and a half later, I get a text saying they didn't use the full 2 hours. He's still a pound and a half over. I'm like, right. Oh, crap, do we have a fight? And I'm talking to Chocolatito's trainer, and he says, we have a fight. Martinez is going to be fined, per California rules. He's fined 20% of his purse. 10% goes to the commission, 10% goes to Team Chocolatito. And I said, well, what else? Like how heavy is he allowed to be? And he said that they're going to weigh in again the morning of the fight, actually noon on Saturday. And if Martinez is 10%, if he weighs in above 10% of 115 pounds, there's another fine.
Right.
Maybe another 20%. I'm not sure on the percentage. But the California State Athletic Commission passed a new rule. It was just enacted in late 2019 and went into effect last year that any combat athlete that weighs in more than 15% of the contracted weight on the day of the fight, he's disqualified, basically. The fight will not happen. The fight is automatically canceled. So Team Martinez has to really monitor his weight from now and until noon tomorrow. And hopefully they're professional enough to do that. It's a huge opportunity for him,
massive opportunity.
It would be ridiculous if he blew this, if he blew this opportunity. And it'd be a real slap in the face to Team Chocolatito, a former, a future Hall of Famer. And really the sport of boxing and all the fans.
Was it surprising to you, Dougie, that Julio Cesar Martinez did come in on late notice, but 5.5 weeks notice, so still a good amount of time.
And he's used to weighing in at 112.
Right, exactly. That's the question I was going to ask. So was it surprising to you, or does it just...
A little bit of a surprise, but I do know that there are certain fighters that put on a lot of weight between fights. And I don't want to, I don't want to perpetuate stereotypes, but in the past, a lot of champions from Mexico They were heavy. They came, they put on a lot of weight between fights. They started camp pretty heavy, and they were very good at making weight, even if it killed them. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of guys like Jorge Arce, Jose Luis Castillo, Eric Morales comes to mind, and they would generally make the weight until they couldn't make the weight. When you do that, when you sort of play with the rules like that in your own body, at some point your body rebels on you. Martinez is 27 years old. He's young enough to do it. Maybe he miscalculated, or just maybe his body has hit that wall, because 27 years old is not young by boxing standards, or by the standards of the lighter weight classes, flyweights. That's pretty mature. So maybe he was, he's used to, his body, he was able to drop a lot of weight the night before or the hours before a weigh-in to make whatever weight he needed to make, whether it was 112 or whatever the contracted weight is, and today he hit the wall. I don't know. Now, Marcos Caballero, the head trainer of Team Chocolatito, he was upset that they didn't put on the plastic and run, get out there and whatever, do laps around the hotel. And
right.
He said, this is what he told me. He said that they just hit mitts, and you'll work up a sweat hitting mitts, but I don't know if that's enough to sweat out two full pounds.
Yeah, because essentially he wanted him to go to the well.
Yeah.
So he's going to get into the ring, not as efficient as he should be, because he's had to, dip below, and burn off those last 3 calories.
But thank goodness we're in California, where they say there's going to be a weigh-in on Saturday, and you have this limit. There's this limit of weight that pounds that you can put on, and if you exceed it, you're going to get fined, and if you exceed this amount, the fight's off. So he's going to have to watch himself, today, the rest of today and tomorrow morning. So he can't go crazy with the rehydration. But in a different jurisdiction, and certainly in Mexico, whatever, if the other side agrees that the fight's on, and let's face it, most of these little guys, these lighter weight classes, they don't make a lot of money. They don't make the money that the glamour divisions make, They don't even make the money that the lightweights make. So it's rare that they're going to turn down a payday, even if their opponent comes in heavy. And you never know if that opponent came in heavy on purpose or not. I like to give the fighters and their teams the benefit of the doubt, but this isn't the first time that Martinez has come in heavy.
Like a Broner, openly said he did it as a tactical decision. Yeah,
openly did and didn't try to lose the weight. I think that was when he fought Vicente Escobedo, and the weight was 130 pounds, and he was huge for that weight. And there's been other instances where fighters miss weights, even champions. They miss weight and they just they give up the belt. The belt becomes vacant. They pay the fine, but they don't try. They don't really try in earnest to make the contracted weight. And I shake my head at that, because I've known so many fighters where it was a struggle for them to make weight. Like it was like an exact science, and no matter what, their fighters' pride, I'm talking about champions. I'm talking about guys like Shane Mosley, Fernando Vargas, where they were world champions, they were HBO fighters, they were making millions of dollars. They could have just said, well, okay, let's just change it to a non-title fight. You know what I mean? Or let's work out a deal with the other side or whatever. We'll pay him whatever. You know what I mean? Like when Floyd Mayweather didn't think that he could make the catch weight of 144 pounds when he came back to fight Juan Manuel Marquez. I think the week of the fight, his team contacted Marquez's team and said, hey, I'm not going to make the weight. Let's change this to a welterweight bout, and we'll pay you. We'll pay you. We'll pay you a lot of money.
Yeah.
How about it? And of course they're going to do it. If you're talking about an extra $300,000 or $600,000,
right?
shoot, of course. You're like, yeah, Floyd, go ahead, weigh in at 146, or whatever, But, and Fernando Vargas really, really, really had to work hard to make 154 pounds. I mean, I think he should have been a middleweight or even a super middleweight, by 1999. But his pride was, if I have a world title at this weight, I have to make the weight. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care if I have to kill myself to make this weight. I'll die on the damn scale. He would really say shit like that. And so when I see fighters just skipping weight now, just kind of like, oh well, I'm not going to struggle. It's getting hard to make the weight, so I'll give up my belt and I'll give up this money and whatever. I shake my head. I really do.
At the weigh-ins, Dougie, what is it that you look for? Or is it hard to tell now whether someone's struggling, because most of the weigh-ins that we attend in media are now ceremonial, like you touched on earlier?
Right. Yeah, so they weigh in, and I get it, and they started doing this a couple years ago when it might have been a Triple G fight. It might have been Gennady Golovkin. He had struggled a little bit to make the weight, and the TV weigh-in was the official weigh-in, so he made the weight. But then he wasn't in the mood to do interviews. Like, his mouth was dry, his tongue was kind of thick, he was grumpy.
Right.
Because he wanted to rehydrate, he wanted to eat, he didn't want people interviewing him. And he did the interviews, but he was kind of surly. And then he complained about it afterwards. Yeah, he complained to Tom Loeffler, and Loeffler said, you know what, let me talk to the commission, and let's, in the future, maybe we do something where the weigh-in is off TV, and then the fighters can, eat a little something, drink some water to where, their bodies look a little bit better. They're not woozy stepping on the scales, so it doesn't lead to all this speculation and, people jumping to conclusions. But also they're able to promote the fight. They're able to, because sometimes it's part of the contract. There's contractual media obligations. The fighter is expected to talk to the media before and after the final press conference and after the weigh-in. And if not to the media, then at least to the network that's broadcasting the fight. This is especially so for pay-per-view events, where every bit of publicity counts. It's very important because everybody's money is on the line. You know what I mean? The promoters are going out on a limb here, and both the promoter and the network, they need a certain number of pay-per-view buys to break even. And of course, the goal is to make a profit. So they actually put it into the fighter contracts. The fighters have to cooperate, at least in terms with the media events that are televised by the broadcast partner. And so it was just, it made sense for everybody, not just the fighters and the broadcast partners, but the promoters and even, the commission. The fighters, we weigh in private, where it's not all crazy commotion and chaos going on. And then a couple hours later, they have the ceremonial weigh-in where fans are invited, the media is there, and it's streamed or broadcast on the platform or network. And then afterwards, the fighters are rehydrated, they're in a good mood, and they talk to the media. They get their little interviews, they get their sound bites, and everybody's happy.
Could you think of examples of weigh-ins you've been to where you've looked at the fighter and thought, he's losing?
Ricky Hatton, before he fought Manny Pacquiao, making 140. He had hit the wall at making junior welterweight, but it was a huge fight, and he made 140, but he often looks sucked in, but he looked especially sucked in for that fight. And the weigh-in, that was a public weigh-in, and one of the livest weigh-in atmospheres I've ever experienced. It seemed like Manchester was crammed inside of the Grand Garden Arena on the MGM property in Las Vegas. And the Philippines came out for Manny. The whole place was packed, and it was so loud. It was deafening. But I recall Hatton making the weight and then stepping off backstage. And I could see from where I was seated, I could see backstage. And he just started downing, looked like these bottles of Gatorade, or some liquid. But he had a bunch of them. He had like 4 or 5, and he downed like 4 in a row, and then took the mic and whatever, addressed the crowd saying, thank you for your support and let's go Manchester or whatever, But I'll tell you another one, Diego Corrales before he fought Floyd Mayweather.
Oh, really?
He was a zombie. Roy Jones Jr., when he made weight for the first fight against Antonio Tarver. Now, he won the fight, but the weigh-in was a big red flag. With Jones, he didn't just look sucked in. His color was off. I'd never seen this, And he's a brown-skinned African-American. He looked gray. His skin was gray. I recall that. I may have wrote about that. And sure enough, he lacked something in that fight. And I didn't think it was a robbery, but I thought that Tarver did enough to earn a draw or even win it by a point or 2. And then, of course, what happened in the rematch happened. His body just wasn't the same after going up to 190 pounds or 195 pounds to fight John Ruiz in his previous fight, and then losing all that. And he only gained muscle. So then he loses all that muscle, like 25 pounds of muscle, to make the light heavyweight limit. And it didn't sit right with his body. And his body was not the same after that. It's like it aged him. It's like his body realized, okay, I'm in my mid-30s now. He basically, he literally hit the wall and was never the elite boxer that he was prior to that fight. And certainly Corrales was, he was a mess. I mean, Corrales was a mess. His life was in shambles. He knew he was going to go to jail for domestic abuse after that fight. But his camp wasn't good, but definitely he looked, he could barely stand up on the scales. Making 130 just did him in. And I'm not saying if he had weighed in and been healthy at the weigh-in that he would have won that fight against Floyd. That was Floyd's night. It's Floyd at his peak, arguably his best performance or whatever. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that everybody who was at that weigh-in looked at each other and said, Corrales has got nothing. We all said it. Even folks who like Corrales, you know what I mean? Folks who were rooting for him or bet money on him, they were like, I shouldn't have bet on him. And those who were planning on betting on him, who hadn't bet on him, said, I'm not betting on him now. I remember that.
Ricky Hatton's a great example of what we just touched on earlier, like people ballooning between fights. Like we touched on, Martinez may have done that.
Yeah, he gained a lot of weight between fights. Yeah, he did that. Morales did that. Fernando Vargas did that. Shane Mosley was pretty good at maintaining his weight, but he wasn't naturally a lightweight. Like, as an amateur, he was really a big junior welterweight. By the time he turned pro, a year or 2 after he turned pro, he could have been fighting at welterweight. But he knew how to lose weight. He had it down to a science. And so he was able to make 135 pounds. And it's no coincidence that he was a monster at lightweight, undefeated at lightweight, and I think he won all of his IBF lightweight title defenses by stoppage, because he put on so much weight. He was a hell of a talent, a good good boxer, a hard puncher, a great body puncher, but his size was part of that equation. You know what I mean?
Going back to this weekend's fight, Chocolatito against Martinez, stylistically, how do you see it, Dougie?
It's going to be the Matador versus the Bull, and Chocolatito's going to have to be the Matador, at least early in the fight, and then by the middle rounds, if he's got it, if he's able to neutralize Martinez's aggression, because we know Martinez is a bull, Chocolatito has to become the bull, and over the second half of the fight, I think it's going to be 2 bulls. And they're going to duke it out on the inside, and I expect it to be exciting, and I can't wait to see it. After today's weigh-in, I expect Martinez to start even harder, even faster, and be even stronger, because he didn't make weight, right? And he didn't bother sweating out those last 2 pounds. And he looks big, he looks strong. Looks strong at the weigh-in. Chocolatito looks good. He never looks great at weigh-ins. Chocolatito is very understated and low energy, prior to a fight. Then he steps into the ring, and so there's like magic that happens. He starts throwing punches, and he starts gaining momentum, and gets stronger as every round goes
like
by.
an old-fashioned steam train.
Yeah, he is. He's a steam train. He really is. But he's got to be careful. He's got to be careful early in this fight. And I know they've done their homework on Martinez. They know that sometimes Martinez switches stances, goes southpaw, and they're ready for that. And they're looking to block and counter. And I expect both fighters to attack the body. It's always smart for a younger fighter to attack the body of an older veteran, especially a guy who's got more than 50 fights,
right?
And has fought over 4 weight classes, as Chocolatito has. And it's a good idea for a veteran to touch the body of the younger man, the challenger, because you want to take that steam away. You want to take away some of that enthusiasm. You want to nip their momentum in the bud. You want to shock them before they even gain any momentum. And I'm looking for Chocolatito to do that. I think he will do that.
It's funny that, like you just touched on, Chocolatito's had over 50 fights. He's a veteran in that weight division, because we normally see people in those weight divisions retire kind of early because it's hard to make weight.
They have higher metabolisms. Just on average, they throw more punches. They burn out quicker. So Chocolatito is kind of a miracle because he's somebody who started at boxing's lightest weight class. He was world class in 2007. That's when he first made Ring's rankings as a strawweight, and he's still here. He's still a world class fighter, and he has faced the best fighters in 4 weight classes: strawweight, junior flyweight, and now junior bantamweight. And the fact that he's still here after all these years, like 14 years, and he has the style that he has. He's a pressure fighter. He's a volume puncher. He's an inside technician. He gets in the trenches and really goes to work in his fights. It's incredible, because even if you're a heavyweight, and they mature the slowest.
Right.
Like a heavyweight can be considered a young guy at 31 years of age. We'll talk about 31-year-old heavyweights as prospects, and they're just coming up. Not so in the lighter weight classes, but even a heavyweight that has a balls to the wall, fast pressure fighting, volume punching style, they burn out. Like Joe Frazier did not have as long of a shelf life as Muhammad Ali. It's just a matter of styles. They burn out. It's a burnout style. It's rough.
Obviously, people who listen to this show, you've been on many times and know that you're a big fan of Chocolatito. When did he first come to your view? When did you first see him?
2007. In 2007, that January, I traveled to Tokyo to witness the first title defense made by Edwin Valero, who had signed with Taken Promotions. And Mr. Honda invited me to be there because he knew that I'd extensively covered Edwin Valero's career. And it was kind of like a PR thing on their side where they wanted to invite a member of the U.S. boxing media to see how big-time boxing was put on in Japan, especially a Taken promotion. And I was happy to go. It was a tremendous experience. I got to get a shout out to my man Nobu Ikushima, who works for Taken Promotions, because he was my chaperone. He took me around Tokyo. We went shopping. We went to the temples, because they were celebrating New Year's, and they take it really seriously in Japanese culture, where it's like you're dropping all the negative shit from the previous year and you're renewing. It's like a rebirth. And whatever beefs you had with anybody, you squash it, and you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm going to be a better human being. And to sort of consummate that, you go to the temples, you say some prayers. And you do that whether you're a Buddhist or a Shinto, or even if you don't have an official religion, or if you're old school Japanese and it's ancestor worship, whatever it is, you go to the temples and you there's a whole ritual, and so he took me to some of the temples. It was awesome, and he went to great restaurants and stuff. So I got to know him, and we promised to keep in touch because he's based in Las Vegas, and I used to see him at all the fights, but I assumed he was flying in from Japan.
Right.
And he's like, no, I live in Vegas. I'm like, well, we got to keep in touch and let me know about these fighters that Mr. Honda has. And I knew at that time from talking with Mr. Honda and the guy who was Edwin Valero's advisor at the time, a guy named Joe Hernandez, I knew that Honda was looking at South American talent. Like he knew, like from boxing old timers and insiders like Joe Hernandez, he knew about the upcoming talent, right? So he was actually considering at that time signing Marcos Maidana.
Oh, nice.
So, but he wasn't sure because Maidana's people were kind of playing hardball, saying, "Hey, we have other promoters that are going to pay us this much if we sign," and he was kind of like, "I think I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass on Maidana." But there's this little guy, Chocolatito, and they had already signed Jorge Linares out of Venezuela. Just like Edwin Valero. But he's like, there's this guy from Central America, from Nicaragua, a strawweight. And I got to be honest, I already started to tune out when he said strawweight. But he said he was trained as an amateur by Alexis Arguello, and then I perked up, and I said they call him Chocolatito, and we think we're going to sign him, but we're going to give him a test. We're going to give him a test later this year. I said, okay, cool. So I told Nobu, I said, hey, let me know. And this is before, YouTube, really started to pick up and stuff, and before you could get a lot of fights, international fights, via the internet, right? So I asked Nobu to ship me a VHS tape or a DVD of Chocolatito's first fight in Japan. And his first fight, he fought a tough dude, a tough cat, who was actually a ring-rated fighter from the Philippines who had just challenged the WBA strawweight champion. I forget the guy's name. His last name was Nida, Niida. And this dude from the Philippines took Nida the 12-round distance, and it was a competitive fight. So that's a hell of an audition. That's a tough test, Chocolatito took this guy out in one round. Just took him out. I think he killed him to the body, man. Like left uppercuts, left hook to the body. This dude's like, I'm done. And so I saw this, and it was such a short video. We decided to put it on MaxBoxing.com. I was editor of MaxBoxing.com at the time, and I got some of his other fights. I either got them from Mr. Honda or maybe from Gilberto Mendoza Jr., the president of the WBA, who was keeping an eye on Chocolatito. But I got some VHS tape or some DVDs in the mail, and I watched them. And that year, Ramon Gonzalez was my prospect of the year. I don't know who ESPN's prospect of the year for 2007 was, but I'm telling you, or SI or Ring Magazine's prospect of the year for 2007. But I don't think whoever they were, they didn't accomplish as much as Chocolatito. So I pat myself on the back for that, because that was just my choice of doing that. But he was officially on the radar 2007, and he won his first world title against Nida, who had never been stopped, and Chocolatito stopped him in 4 rounds. I was watching. I was keeping an eye on him from that point on. So this dude has been world class since 2007, and he's been championship level since 2008.
Do you know how he managed to end up Marco Caballero's gym?
Caballero is Nicaraguan, and I think for one of his fights, he used Caballero's gym. He had his old trainer. Was it Ubando? Arnulfo Ubando? His previous trainer who passed away after a stroke. They were either fighting in Vegas or they were fighting in LA. So they needed a camp that was in Southern California, close by. But they wanted a camp, where he's separated. And Chocolatito had done a camp with Abel Sanchez and Triple G and Big Bear. And camp went okay, but Big Bear's not for everybody. He didn't like the altitude. He didn't like the cold. He didn't like being up in the mountains. It's a little too isolated. So Coachella was kind of perfect. They went, and he had a good camp, and Chocolatito's camp got along really well with Mr. Caballero. So they just stayed in touch, and I think it was Chocolatito's manager reached out to Caballero when Chocolatito decided, following the rematch knockout loss to Sor Rungvisai, that he would not retire, that he would indeed return to boxing, that he would give it one more try. And so they reached out to Caballero, and it's proved to be a really good matchup, a good pairing. I think they have chemistry, and with every fight in every camp, I think it gets stronger. And Caballero has told me that in their recent fights, this camp and the previous camp for the Estrada rematch, the trust is stronger than ever. And Chocolatito isn't just taking orders, he's listening to him. And he's asking questions, too. Like, well, why do we do this? Or should we do that? Or, okay, but he trusts Caballero because they've had really good results.
Yeah.
Why not?
And for people that are listening, that's Randy Caballero's dad.
Yes, Marcos guided his son Randy to the IBF bantamweight title in 2014.
He beat Stuart Hall from England.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, and they fought in Monaco. And prior to that, he had to win an IBF title eliminator against a Japanese fighter, and they traveled to Japan. Mr. Caballero he's been around, and he's well traveled, and he knows what it takes to get a fighter to the championship level. But of course, it's a great honor for Marcos to train a future Hall of Famer like Chocolatito, and it's just icing on the cake that this Hall of Famer hails from his home country. There's a lot of pride involved.
Yeah. Looking at obviously Saturday's card, give us your pick on the undercard, Dougie. What fight do you think will jump out for us?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Mauricio Lara Emilio Sanchez fight. It's a featherweight fight. Sanchez is a guy I'm familiar with from Golden Boy's developmental series a few years back. That they used to do the show out of the Blasco Theater in downtown Los Angeles, and Emilio was on a lot of those shows. I always liked his style. He's an aggressive boxer, decent power, good athlete. He has a younger brother named Saul Sanchez, who I think is an up-and-comer in the bantamweight division that everybody should keep an eye on because he's promoted by Thompson Boxing, so I see a lot of him. But they're both kind of quiet, shy guys, but they're really dedicated boxers. They're good athletes. They're both trained by Manny Robles, who runs a really tough gym. So I've heard that Sanchez had a good camp. No problems, no injuries, good energy, good sparring. He's up for this. He's being overlooked. He feels his team, they feel that they're being overlooked by a lot of, most of the boxing world because, Mauricio Lara, has that win over Josh Warrington. And has traveled well and is on a really good win streak, and Lara is a badass. Like he's a fighter, he's a bomber, he's just like just an old school Mexican badass who throws bombs, and so it's a good contest. I like it. I like Mexican national versus Mexican American matchups. Those used to be like the biggest attractions in Southern California back in the day. The big attractions in San Diego, Los Angeles, certainly in Inglewood where the Forum was, and those were the matchups that the promoters and the great matchmakers back in the day, like Don Shargan, they would always make those matchups. They would call it Mexican versus Pocho. That was I think it's a derogatory term, but
really?
The Mexican nationals would call the Mexican Americans Pochos, and they were kind of look down on them like you're not real Mexican.
Right.
Yeah, you were born here. If you speak English, you're not a real Mexican.
Right.
And if your Spanish isn't good, you certainly aren't a real Mexican. You know what I mean? Like so, it was like, but there were some strong rivalries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I like it. That matchup kind of harkens back to that old tradition, and I think it's going to deliver. I don't know who wins it. I'm biased. I kind of watched Emilio come up, so I'm not going to say I'm rooting for Sanchez. I just want to see a good fight. But I like the kid, and I want to see him succeed, and it's a huge opportunity. But regardless, if Lara kicks ass, good for him. Another feather in his cap.
It was probably the most tense or most...
Right, did you see the stare down?
Yeah, the stare down and the weigh-in was probably
the most intense.
Attitude.
Like, they were like, hey, we're going to fight.
Yeah.
Everybody else is standing like 3 feet apart, and then they shake hands or hug each other, like the female fighters did, and these dudes are like forehead to forehead, like, what's up?
But then Lara kind of moved a little bit closer.
Oh yeah, no, Lara kind of initiated it. Lara's kind of like, I'm going to show this kid.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the well-traveled one. You know what I mean? I'm the one who traveled to the UK and beat the dude in his backyard. You know, so he's obviously he's got the momentum. He's got more accolades, and he seems really confident. But so does Sanchez.
All right, I appreciate your time today. If you're going to give everyone your social media handles, anything that's coming up with
Dougie Fischer. That's Twitter and Instagram. That's DOUGIEFISCHER.
And anything coming up with Ring Magazine to announce?
There's some. We do have some announcements coming up. They haven't been finalized yet, but there's some good stuff. There's some 100-year anniversary celebrations coming up. It's too early to announce it, but we'll announce them later this month, coming up in the next couple of months, and I'm looking forward to that. We just finished our Larry Holmes special edition. If you're not a subscriber, you should subscribe right now, because the issue that we're working on now is going to be a big one. It's going to be a lot of fun, sort of in that vein of 100 years of boxing, like a top 100 list. But definitely, if you're a fan who's over 40 years old, you know, whether or not you were a Larry Holmes fan during his championship run, you got to appreciate and respect Larry the Legend now, and we're real proud of this issue. So if you're not a subscriber, subscribe. If you just want to buy or pre-order the magazine, you can go to the Ring Shop. That's ringmagshop.com, and you can buy it that way, and you know, just look for it on newsstands as well.
And we are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and keep a watch out on the Twitter. We'll be updating you during the weekend for the Chocolatito-Martinez fight.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.